You've learned how to smile while your jaw tightens. You've mastered the art of saying yes while something inside you quietly rots. You apologize for existing, for taking space, for having needs. And you call this maturity. You call this kindness. But here's the moment you can't escape. At 3 in the morning, when there's no one left to impress, you feel it. That hollow pressure in your chest. The quiet rage you keep swallowing. The truth you've been trained not to say out loud. This isn't virtue. It's fear wearing good manners like a mask. You were conditioned early to believe that being liked was the same as being safe. That approval was protection. That if you made yourself agreeable enough, flexible enough, invisible enough, the world would reward you with peace. Look closely at your life and ask yourself honestly, did it? Or did the people who asked the most, took the most, demanded the most, somehow end up with everything, while you, the fixer, the peacemaker, the good one, were left tired, overlooked, quietly resentful? There's a reason you feel drained, and it has nothing to do with effort. You've been trying to buy respect with a currency that has no purchasing power. Approval is cheap. Respect is expensive. When you chase being liked, you teach the world a dangerous lesson, that your boundaries are negotiable, your time is disposable, and your presence is free. And free things are never handled with care. 5 centuries ago, a man who saw human nature without romance stripped this illusion down to bone. He wasn't interested in kindness. He wasn't interested in moral theater. He cared about one thing only: effectiveness, survival, power as it actually works, not as we wish it would. His warning still cuts today because it exposes something uncomfortable. Love, affection, approval, these things last only as long as they are convenient. The moment they cost something, they break. Respect does not. Respect is preserved by consequence, by the silent understanding that certain lines are not crossed without cost. Replace fear with respect, and the principle becomes clear. Being liked is fragile. Being respected is structural. Think of it this way. Being liked is a glass bridge suspended over chaos. It looks beautiful. It feels reassuring. But one crack, one inconvenience, and it shatters beneath your feet. Respect is iron. Heavy, cold, unforgiving. It doesn't care how you feel, but it holds. And the shift from one to the other is not gentle. If you choose respect, you will disturb the equilibrium. People will resist, some will leave, others will test you harder than ever before. Because the moment you stop performing, you expose the contract they thought you signed. Here is the diagnosis most people avoid. The need to be liked is not a personality trait. It's a trauma response. It's what happens when you learn early that safety depends on someone else's mood. So you adapt. You scan faces. You read tone shifts like weather patterns. You smooth your edges so no one feels threatened. You become emotionally multilingual, but internally mute. You call this empathy. In reality, it's self-erasure. When your primary goal is to be liked, you hand the remote control of your nervous system to anyone within reach. A raised eyebrow can ruin your day. A delayed message can hijack your peace. A mild disagreement can feel like existential danger. You're not living. You're performing. And the audience is fickle. Here is the brutal mechanic underneath it all. Human beings are fundamentally self-interested. People adapt their loyalty to advantage. They stay close as long as you are useful, pleasant, or convenient. The moment you introduce friction by saying no, by needing something, by asserting value, the warmth evaporates. If you build your identity on being liked, you build it on sand. The tide doesn't even need to be malicious, it just needs to change. Respect, on the other hand, is built on something entirely different. It's built on limits, on clarity, on the quiet knowledge that your voice does not disappear under pressure. Respect begins the moment you stop needing to be chosen. You choose yourself. Here's the economic law no one applies to their inner world. Scarcity creates value. Gold is prized because it's rare. Air is essential, but you don't pay for it because it's everywhere. Most people are emotional air, always available, always responsive, always willing, and because they are everywhere, they are valued nowhere. Power enters when you stop being constantly accessible, not by disappearing completely, but by becoming deliberate. This is not cruelty. This is architecture. When you are always present, no one wonders about you. When you are always agreeable, no one listens closely. But when you pull back just enough, the dynamic shifts. Your time becomes a privilege. Your attention becomes weight. Your presence creates gravity. People don't respect what they can summon at will. They respect what they must approach with intention. This is where the transformation begins. Uncomfortable, quiet, irreversible. And if something in you feels exposed right now, that's not danger. That's the old programming realizing its days are numbered. In the next part, we'll dismantle the behaviors that keep you trapped over-explaining, emotional leakage, compulsive availability, and replace them with something far more dangerous, controlled absence. Because once you learn to withdraw without guilt, the world starts to lean toward you, and power, real power, finally has a place to land. Once you begin pulling away from the addiction of approval, something strange happens. The world pushes back. People don't confront you immediately. They probe. A joke with a sharper edge. A request disguised as an expectation. A subtle guilt trip wrapped in concern. This is the test phase. Because when you stop being endlessly available, you force others to confront a question they've never had to ask before. What happens if I can't access you on demand? Most people panic at this moment and retreat. They apologize. They explain. They rush to reassure everyone that they're still the same, that they're still safe, still useful, still controllable. And in doing so, they erase the progress they just made. Here's the trap you fall into every time you try to set a boundary. You explain it. You don't just say no. You say no with a justification, a backstory, a defense brief. I can't come tonight because I'm really tired and I have a big day tomorrow. I can't help with that because I'm overwhelmed lately. I'm not available because... Stop. Every explanation turns your boundary into a negotiation. It tells the other person your decision is provisional, that it can be talked down, reframed, solved. And they will solve it. They'll counter with solutions to your excuses, not respect for your limits. They'll compress your fatigue, minimize your needs, repackage their wants as reasonable compromises, and suddenly, your no becomes a maybe. Your boundary becomes porous. Your authority dissolves. Powerful people don't justify their decisions. They state them, not aggressively, not emotionally, factually. No, that doesn't work for me. I'm not available. I won't be doing that. Complete sentences, no apology, no elaboration. The silence that follows will feel unbearable at first. Your nervous system will scream at you to fill it, to smooth it over, to rescue the other person from discomfort. Don't. That silence is not emptiness, it's pressure. And pressure is where respect is forged. When you refuse to explain, you communicate something deeper than words ever could. That your inner world is not up for debate. At first, you'll feel rude. You'll feel cold. You'll feel like you violated some invisible social law. Observe what actually happens. Most people don't explode. They recalibrate. They may not like it, but they will respect it, because you respected yourself first. This is where we need to clarify something critical. Respect is not aggression. The loudest person in the room is rarely respected. They're tolerated, mocked, or avoided. The one who yells, threatens, postures, that's not power. That's insecurity leaking. True Machiavellian strength is calm. It's the quiet certainty that you could impose consequences, but you don't need to announce them. Think of a predator that doesn't rush. It doesn't flail. It doesn't explain itself. It waits. Respect comes from the implied capacity for action, not the performance of it. This is why emotional restraint matters more than emotional expression. When you react instantly, anger, defensiveness, justification, you reveal your internal levers. You show people exactly how to move you. But when you pause, when you let words land without immediately responding, when your face stays neutral and your body still, you become unreadable. And unreadable people are dangerous, not because they're cruel, but because they can't be easily manipulated. Here's a practical image to anchor this. Imagine a chessboard. The reactive player moves quickly, emotionally, visibly. The strategist moves slowly, sparingly, almost boringly. But notice this. The strategist controls the board not by moving more, but by forcing the other player to reveal themselves. When you stop reacting, people start talking more, explaining more, overcompensating. They show their hand while you keep yours hidden. This is the neutral mask. Not fake, not performative, simply controlled. It's the ability to receive praise without chasing it, criticism without collapsing, provocation without snapping. And this mask does something subtle but profound. It turns the spotlight outward. Instead of you being evaluated, others begin evaluating themselves in relation to you. Did I go too far? Why didn't that land? What is he thinking right now? Uncertainty replaces entitlement. And uncertainty is the birthplace of respect. Now, here's the line most people cross incorrectly. They think respect means punishment. It doesn't. It means consequence. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries and nothing changes, your words are meaningless, not because you're weak, but because there's no cost. The most effective consequence is not anger. It's withdrawal. You don't argue. You don't nag. You don't explain again. You remove access, attention, availability, warmth. Not dramatically, quietly. The relationship changes temperature, and people learn very quickly what behavior is allowed when access depends on it. If you forgive the same violation over and over, you're not being kind. You're training them. This is the brutal clarity most people avoid. Either accept people as they are, or change your proximity to them. Complaining while staying is where respect goes to die. In the next part, we're going deeper into emotional unreadability, strategic silence, and why being an open book makes you a liability in a world driven by leverage. Because once you stop leaking your inner state, you stop being managed by other people's reactions, and that's when your presence starts to carry weight without effort. There is a lie that sounds virtuous and destroys people quietly. Be authentic. Wear your heart on your sleeve. Let people know how you feel. In ordinary life, this sounds healthy. In power dynamics, it is suicidal. Every time you broadcast your emotional state, you hand out a map of your nervous system. You tell people what excites you, what wounds you, what destabilizes you. And once someone has that map, they don't need strength to control you, only timing. If praise makes you melt, you can be bought. If criticism makes you spiral, you can be steered. If rejection makes you panic, You can be led anywhere. This is why being an open book is not honesty. It is exposure. Those who operate with leverage don't need to attack you. They simply wait for you to react. And the moment you do, you've already lost ground. The alternative is not coldness. It's containment. Containment is the ability to experience emotion without advertising it, to feel anger without leaking it, to feel disappointment without dramatizing it, to feel satisfaction without seeking validation for it. Think of a sealed reactor. Inside, there is enormous energy. Outside, there is stillness. That stillness is what people respond to. When you stop reacting instantly, something unsettling happens in the room. The rhythm breaks. People expect a response, a signal, a cue, and it doesn't arrive. They start filling the silence themselves. They over-explain. They justify. They backtrack. And suddenly, they're the ones exposed. This is not manipulation. It's gravity. The observer always holds more power than the reactor. Here's a simple practice that rewires everything. When someone provokes you intentionally or not, pause. Not theatrically, not dramatically, just long enough. Let the moment hang. Let eye contact settle. Let your face stay neutral. That pause creates a psychological vacuum, and human beings hate vacuums. They rush to fill them. In that space, uncertainty grows, and uncertainty forces self-regulation. Most people don't disrespect you because they're evil. They do it because they're testing. Testing how far they can go. Testing whether there's a cost. The pause tells them there might be. This is why calm is misunderstood as weakness by the inexperienced, but recognized as dominance by anyone who understands power. Now comes a harder truth to swallow. Many of the people you've been trying to please are not noble. They're not monsters either. They're simply human, self-interested, inconsistent, opportunistic. When you operate from a need to be liked, you project your own values onto others. You assume generosity will be returned, that loyalty will be matched, that consideration will be reciprocated. This is not morality. It's projection, and it leads to disappointment every time. The moment you strip away the fantasy of how people should behave and deal with how they actually behave, something liberating happens. You stop taking things personally. Of course they acted in their own interest. Of course they disappeared when it became inconvenient. Of course they pushed when they sensed softness. That's not cruelty. That's human nature. When you stop moralizing it, you can finally strategize around it. This doesn't make you bitter. It makes you precise. Precision means you stop giving blood to stones. You stop offering loyalty to the disloyal. You stop paying full price for counterfeit connection. And here we arrive at the core leverage point most people never reach. Your willingness to walk away. If you are not prepared to lose a relationship, a job, a deal, or a role, you have no leverage inside it. None. The one who needs it least always holds the advantage. Most cycles of disrespect persist for one reason only: fear of loss, fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of the empty space. So you tolerate, you rationalize, you stay. But a structure that cannot survive without external approval is already compromised. You must build an internal position strong enough to stand alone, not isolated, not bitter, independent. A life so internally rich mentally, emotionally, directionally, that others become a choice, not a necessity. When you reach this point, your posture changes without effort. You stop leaning forward. You stop chasing resolution. You stop explaining why you deserve basic respect. Your energy communicates a single message without words. I want you here, but I do not need you. That distinction changes everything. Neediness repels. Autonomy attracts. Not because people are cruel, but because strength is reassuring. People want to orbit something stable, not something that collapses under pressure. This is why the most respected people rarely ask for respect. They don't need to. Their willingness to walk away speaks louder than demands ever could. In the next part, we'll dismantle the myth of usefulness, the idea that doing more, giving more, fixing more makes you indispensable. Because there's a difference between being valuable and being consumed. And once you understand that difference, you stop being used and start being sought. There's a role many people fall into without ever choosing it. The helper, the fixer, the reliable one. You become known as the person who handles things, who solves problems, who shows up when others hesitate. And at first, it feels empowering. You feel needed, useful, relevant. But usefulness is a dangerous identity if you're not careful, because a tool is also useful. A tool is kept as long as it works, and replaced the moment it doesn't. This is the trap of being liked through service. You confuse indispensability with respect. You believe that if you do enough, give enough, sacrifice enough, people will finally see your value. They do see it. They just see it as something to extract. Here is the uncomfortable distinction you must internalize. There is a difference between a craftsman and an appliance. An appliance is always on, always available, always expected to function. A craftsman is sought out, paid well, and respected because his skill is rare and selectively applied. Most people trying to be liked turn themselves into appliances. They run errands. They solve emotional crises. They overextend, overfunction, overdeliver. And then they're shocked when they're taken for granted. Not because others are evil, but because the role you accepted trained them how to treat you. Competence alone does not command respect. Competence combined with selectivity does. The shift is subtle but ruthless. You stop doing everything. You start doing one thing exceptionally well, and you offer it on your terms. This is where sovereignty replaces servitude. A servant waits for instruction. A sovereign decides what will be done. When you help from abundance, it strengthens you. When you help from obligation, it empties you. Your body already knows the difference. Pay attention to resentment, that tight heat in your chest when you say yes but want to say no, that irritation you suppress and later feel guilty for. Resentment is not a flaw. It's feedback. It's your internal system telling you that you are leaking power. Ignore it long enough and it turns into bitterness. Listen to it early and it becomes guidance. Here's the cost most people underestimate. If you choose respect over likability, your circle will shrink, not dramatically, organically. The parasites fall away first. They sense the supply drying up. The manipulators leave when their tactics stop working. The insecure disappear because your stability mirrors their weakness. For a while, it gets quiet. And that quiet can be terrifying if your identity was built on being needed. This is where the old voice returns. The one that whispers, maybe I should apologize. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should smooth things over. Don't. That silence isn't emptiness. It's space. Space for people who don't require self-betrayal to stay close. Space for relationships that are based on clarity, not obligation. Space for equals. This is where solitude earns its reputation, not as loneliness, but as refinement. Clarity is born in quiet. You are shedding a version of yourself that survived but never led. You're trading the sugar rush of approval for something heavier, slower, and infinitely more sustaining. Self-respect. And here is the paradox most people never expect. When you stop trying to be liked, you become magnetic. Not to everyone, but to the right ones. Because most people are starving for solidity in a world of emotional chaos. They're tired of performative kindness, of passive aggression, of resentment disguised as politeness. When you set boundaries, you make people feel safe. They know where you stand. They don't have to guess. They don't have to tiptoe. Consistency creates trust. Trust creates connection. This is the irony Machiavelli understood but never needed to advertise. The man who no longer begs for approval is the man others want approval from. But to reach that position, you must pass through fire. You must be willing to be misunderstood, to be the villain in someone else's story, to let people walk away with the wrong conclusion about you. Because the person who needs to be seen as good is controlled by the crowd. The person who needs to be whole is not. In the final part, we'll bring this together into one decisive choice. Not a mindset, not a tactic. A line you draw inside yourself that changes how every interaction unfolds. Because power doesn't announce itself. It shows up as a man who no longer flinches. Here is the final threshold, and most people never cross it, not because they don't understand, but because they are afraid of what happens on the other side. The last illusion to die is the belief that if you just explain yourself well enough, the world will finally understand you and treat you fairly. It won't. Clarity does not come from being understood. Power comes from being unshakable even when you are misunderstood. There is a moment, quiet, internal, irreversible, when you stop needing agreement to stand firm. When you stop rehearsing conversations in your head. When you stop defending your choices to people who never earned a vote in them. That moment is sovereignty. From that point on, your life stops being a debate. You don't announce boundaries. You don't threaten consequences. You don't seek validation for your direction. You simply move, and people adjust or they fall away. This is the nuclear option most people avoid, the willingness to walk away cleanly, not in anger, not in protest, not as a performance, but with calm finality. If you are not willing to lose a relationship, a role, a deal, or a version of yourself, you will always be managed inside it. The person who needs the outcome least holds the leverage. This is not cruelty, it is structure. A fortress that cannot stand alone has already fallen. You must build an inner world so ordered, so deliberate, so self-directed that external validation becomes optional, a luxury, not a lifeline. When you reach that point, something fundamental shifts in your presence. You stop leaning in. You stop overgiving. You stop trying to be persuasive. You communicate a message without words. I choose you, but I do not depend on you. That energy is unmistakable. Neediness has a smell. It triggers extraction. Autonomy has gravity. It triggers respect. People don't follow you because you chase them. They orbit because you are solid. This is where the final misunderstanding dissolves. Respect is not dominance over others. It is command over yourself. A man who cannot tolerate discomfort will always negotiate his principles away. A man who cannot stand alone will always trade truth for belonging. But the one who can sit in disapproval without flinching, the one who can let silence stretch without rushing to fix it, the one who can walk away without slamming the door, that man cannot be trampled. You were never meant to be endlessly useful. You were never meant to be universally liked. You were never meant to bleed yourself dry for harmony. You were meant to be precise, selective, anchored. This path costs you something. It costs you the crowd. It costs you comfort. It costs you the identity of the good one who is easy to deal with. But what you gain is not abstract. You gain self-command. You gain clarity. You gain a presence that doesn't need to raise its voice to be felt. And here is the final paradox. When you stop chasing approval, real connection becomes possible. When you stop negotiating your worth, others feel it. When you honor yourself first, you no longer need to demand respect, it emerges. But only if you are willing to walk through the fire of disapproval. Only if you are willing to be cast as the villain in someone else's story, so you can finally be the author of your own. So now the choice is yours. You can keep smiling, keep nodding, keep shrinking, hoping one day the world will notice and reward your restraint. It won't. Or you can draw a line, internally, quietly, permanently, and decide that from this moment on, you will not be liked at the cost of being hollow. You will not be agreeable at the cost of being erased. You will choose respect, beginning with your own. If you are ready to make that trade, don't just think it. Assert it, write it, anchor it, commit to it. I choose power. Not power over others, but power over the one thing that has always mattered most, yourself. This is where everything becomes simple and unforgiving. There is no technique left to learn. No tactic to hide behind. No clever framing to save you from the truth you now see clearly. The moment you understand that being liked was never protection, never love, never power, only a trade you made out of fear, you cannot unknow it. From here on, every choice reveals you. You will feel the pull to return to old habits, to soften your edges, to explain yourself just this once, to smooth tension so the room feels comfortable again. That urge is not kindness, it is withdrawal. It is the body craving the approval it once used to feel safe. Do not confuse discomfort with danger. Power does not feel warm at first. It feels quiet, isolating, heavy, because power requires you to stand without witnesses, without reassurance, without permission. It asks you to become the authority you kept searching for in others. Understand this. The world does not reward men who are good. It rewards men who are grounded, who know where they end, who do not leak themselves into every interaction hoping to be chosen. From now on, your life is no longer a performance. It is a position. You will be misunderstood, and that is not a flaw. It is a filter. The people who only valued your compliance will fall away. Let them. They were never aligned with your growth. They were attached to your usefulness. When access ends, entitlement reveals itself. Do not argue with that revelation. Observe it. You do not need to correct the stories people tell about you when you stop being available. You do not need to defend your boundaries. Boundaries that require defense were never boundaries. They were requests. Silence will become one of your most powerful assets. Not passive silence, intentional silence. The kind that refuses to react, refuses to chase, refuses to explain. In a world addicted to noise, restraint becomes dominance. Distance will become another signal, not abandonment, but selectivity. You will no longer place yourself where you are tolerated instead of valued. You will no longer invest energy where there is no return. This is not selfishness. It is stewardship. And above all, you will learn to walk away cleanly, not with rage, not with speeches, not with threats, but with finality. The willingness to leave is the source of all leverage. The man who can stand alone cannot be cornered. The man who does not fear loss cannot be controlled. When you stop clinging, people feel it. When you stop leaning, dynamics reorganize around you. This is not about becoming feared. It is about becoming immovable. You will still be kind, but not porous. Still calm, but not passive. Still human, but no longer available for manipulation. Respect will not arrive as applause. It will show up as pauses, as careful language around you, as people thinking twice before crossing lines they sense exist, even when unspoken. And the final truth is this: You were never meant to be liked at the cost of your spine. You were never meant to survive by shrinking. You were never meant to apologize for taking up space in your own life. From this moment forward, you choose alignment over approval, structure over sentiment, self-command over validation. Let others keep chasing acceptance. You are building authority. And that begins with one quiet decision, made once and honored daily. You will no longer abandon yourself to be chosen. That is not arrogance. That is sovereignty, and that is where real power begins.